Hobbes does believe in natural law. And part of that belief is that there are natural precepts or rules that we know naturally and that we probably know we should live by. But those laws are empty, unfortunately. They are empty in terms of the reliability with which we and others will live by them. These are laws like justice, mercy, equity, and generally, he says, the law of the golden rule of doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. And we know these things naturally, but that doesn't mean we follow them naturally. We know that they're right, but we either don't want to follow them and choose not to, or we feel that we can't because others won't either and that we have to defend ourselves. And that's a big, big part of it is diffidence. That is mistrust of others. And so, in the state of nature, which is the state of war for Hobbes, there's nothing unjust about acting unjustly, you might say, because human beings, it's the most rational thing to do. To strike first, let's say, to presume that others are going to harm you if it's in their self-interest or if they think it is, and to do it to them first. There's nothing wrong with that in the state of nature. And that's why human beings, again, if they're following this law of peace and they're doing it in their rationally in their own self-interest, they're going to try to get out of this state of war, this state of nature, and they do that by creating the Leviathan. So he starts the final cause, end, or design of men who naturally love liberty and dominion over others, and the introduction of that restraint upon themselves in which we see them live in commonwealths, is the foresight of their own preservation and of a more contented life thereby. That is, to live in a commonwealth, to live in a state, to live in a state of civilization means that we have to restrain ourselves in the sense that we have to curtail some of our natural liberty. And we don't like that, but we do it to get other things. It's a compromise. It's a very old idea. It goes back to Plato's Republic, the idea that justice is only something that we do when we fear punishment. And Hobbes would agree 100% and would say that Plato's wrong, that no one wants ever to be just voluntarily. And so justice, that is doing right to others and thereby making sacrifices for their sake, is something that is thrust upon us by the demands of our own preservation and a more contented life. We have to create a power larger than us all, and it's described towards the end of this chapter. As he says here, the only way to erect such a common power, able to defend them from the invasion of foreigners and the injuries of one another. Right? So this is the Leviathan would be something that would be strong enough to defend us from foreign enemies, but of course defend us from each other domestically, civilly, and thereby to secure them in such sort as that by their own industry and by the fruits of the earth they may nourish themselves and live contentedly, is to confer all their power and strength upon one man or upon one assembly of men. So it could be a king, it could be a parliament or a congress, that may reduce all their wills by plurality of voices unto one will. So the idea of liberal government that he's forming here is that human individuals unite their wills voluntarily into one great will and agree to live by it, to have it settle their disputes, make law, and have, most crucially, have the right and the ability to punish transgressions of that law, without which none of this makes any sense, right? This is more than consent or concord. It is a real unity of them all in one and the same person, made by covenant, by agreement, of every man with every man, in such manner as if every man should say to every man, I authorize and give up my right of governing myself to this man or to this assembly of men, on this condition, that you give up your right to him and authorize all his actions in like manner. So we have this mutual agreement, the covenant. I give up my natural liberty to do whatever I think right to defend myself if you do the same. And we give it all over to this one man or one assembly of men. The multitude so united in one person is called a commonwealth, in Latin, civitas. This is the generation of that great Leviathan, or rather, to speak more reverently, of that mortal God, to which we owe, under the immortal God, our peace and defense. For by this authority given him by every particular man in the commonwealth, he has the use of so much power and strength conferred on him, that by terror thereof, you see what it's got to be a strong state, right? It's got to be a state that can instill terror in individuals. Because otherwise, according to Hobbes' own theory of human nature, people just do whatever's in their self-interest. He's like a Thrasymachon, right? The only way you're going to get people to fall into line and to respect each other's rights, basically, is through a kind of terror. By terror thereof, he is enabled to form the wills of them all, to peace at home and mutual aid against their enemies abroad. And in him consists the essence of the commonwealth, which defined it is, one person, of whose acts a great multitude, by mutual covenants one with another, have made themselves every one the author, to the end he may use the strength and means of them all, as he shall think expedient for their peace and common defense. And he that carries this person is called the sovereign, and said to have sovereign power, and everyone else his subject. It's scary, really, what Hobbes is describing. It's really creating a monster. And so, but the monster is the Leviathan. It is scary. And but maybe to his credit, one thing I kept in mind is this has to be legitimate. This has to be voluntary on the part of individuals. That is, their act of uniting their will into the common will to create the Leviathan has to be a rational and voluntary decision on their part. It has to be. They have to know what they're getting into, I guess. They can't be forced into being members of the Commonwealth, although maybe there's more to the book that might question that, but it would seem that that's quite important. So yeah, this is the creation of the state. This is the payoff. We create the Leviathan because the state of nature is such a hell, as he's outlined, especially in chapter 13, that anything would be better. And giving up quite a bit of our liberty and our natural authority over ourselves to create this Leviathan is the price we pay, Hobbes would say, to get out of that hell, that state of nature, which is also the state of war.